Hello everybody, my name is Manuez and welcome to another Eternal Contenders video series. Today I got a pretty sweet new deck for you guys that I've been working on the last couple days and that has been doing really well for me actually. It really seems like I stumbled upon a legit new archetype here. I call it plain and simply Praxis Midrange. It's basically like a Praxis version of like what Elysian Midrange does, except with a couple of good red burn spells instead of the typical blue cards. Second, I'll just go on away. Alright, so the idea of the deck is basically the same as with every like time Obelisk based mid-range deck. You have all the like typical Obelisk deck pieces: Initiate, Favored, Acolyte, Titan, Obelisk, Displacers, which I usually run in most of my Obelisk decks these days as well, just because the card is so flexible and generates so much tempo for you, and on the other hand can also generate a lot of value in the longer games by bouncing utility units and reusing them, like in this case Favored, Acolyte, Friendly Wisp and Carnosaur, or simply rebuy units that have been permafrosted, for example, like a permafrosted Dawnwalker. Alright, then we have the typical like time mid-range package of Friendly Wisp and Dawnwalker, alongside a bunch of 5+ strength units like Sandstorm Titan, in this case Predatory Connoisseur, which I'll talk about in a moment, and Amber Monument as like the third card. This only to some extent takes up power slots in the deck and also actually takes up actual card slots in the deck, because the card is good enough that it is worth running as like a 5/5 overwhelm for 5 that can be a power if we need a power, rather than the other way around basically. Alright, and in addition we basically have the 3 good burn spells: Flameglass, Torch and Obliterate, and they work really nice in the deck. They give us extra removal. They're not the most efficient as removal because they are kind of power inefficient as removal, because usually you will kill stuff that is cheaper than them, especially with Flame Blast. But it's fine, like you usually removal stuff in the mid to late game a lot of the time, and then it's fine. All you care about is to have something that gets the job done. Doesn't need to be the most tempo efficient, because we usually lock up the board pretty well anyway, so tempo doesn't matter that much anymore at that point. And Flame Blast is particularly efficient in this deck relative to other decks because we have so much power. We have 27 power if we count the monuments as full. We have 4 Initiative Descents, 4 Talir's Favored, 4 Amber Acolyte, so that's a lot of power. So the deck can easily Flame Blast for 7 to 9 in a reasonably long game, not even super long games. Like super long games, the deck can easily Flame Blast for like 9+. I've had Flame Blast for like 10 or that's not a big deal in the late game. Then we have Obliterate. Flame Blast is arguably a bit better in the deck, but Obliterate's like the next best thing, and they're pretty close. They have different up and down sides basically, while Flame Blast overall has a little more upside, I would say, because it's so flexible. Like on 5 and 6 power, Obliterate is better, and also when targeting smaller stuff, but in every other scenario Flame is better. The burn spells being removal is nice in the sense that the deck basically doesn't have to play dedicated removal, so you never have dead cards. If your opponent doesn't have removal, doesn't matter. Our removal can burn people out, our removal is a threat, our temporary removal can generate us value and also is a threat, so all cards in the deck do something no matter what the opponent is doing, which is very good, because having dead cards is a major downside in a lot of decks. This deck basically has none, which is one of its strengths, I think, and why it performed so well. So basically, the last card that I need to talk about is Predatory Connoisseur. I haven't played the card that much in the longest time, because all the decks that I played, it didn't really fit in that well. But in this deck it has been really impressing me, because I wanted another way to trigger cards like Friendly Wisp and Dawnwalker. Granted, Friendly Wisp is a little slow in this deck without like cards like Fall Prince and stuff. It usually takes till like turn 4 or 5 to draw the card, so the card needs to survive a couple turns, which sometimes doesn't happen, but it's still fine. Like if they aggressively kill or silence it, fine, then they don't do that to our like, Dawnwalker, for example, with the silence. Any other card has just been generating lots of tempo, lots of card advantage. For me, you have to be a bit careful when you use it to like not get countered by an ambush unit or by a cheap fast spell removal. But overall, the card has been doing great work, and in like long games it even comes up that you like Displacer or Carnosaur to reuse it and stuff. Just the swings that card produced have been pretty impressive. You will see in the games once we get to play it. And yeah, initially I tried Arcana Monitor as a 5-drop. Just had like 25 base power and I think like 3 to his favored, which already felt a bit skimpy, especially since we card like Flameglass and Displacer shenanigans and Obelisk to make use of excess power. And Monitor wasn't reliably even triggering Wisp and Dawnwalker, so that wasn't that great. Pump effect's kinda nice, but the card's very susceptible to silences and can get you blown out. Makes your power requirements a bit worse because sometimes you can't play it on 5 because you don't have double of both. Doesn't happen that often, but it comes up. And then I thought by myself, like, why not just play Amber Monument as our 5-drop? Plus, we don't need actual 8 5-drops because Obliterate is also like our turn 5 play. And yeah, that allowed me basically to go up to 27 power with 4 monuments. Since with 4 favored, that's overall like enough power and allows us to not having to play Monument as an actual power card a lot of the time, and also make sure we are never screwed. Like with 27 plus Favored and Acolyte, chances that we are screwed are very small, and also at the same time kind of low that we flood too much because we have monuments, we have these guys, we have Obelisk to make use of these guys, and we also have Flameblast, so the deck rarely floods out too hard. And the 5/5 overwhelm for 5 is actually a really good threat, especially if you play cards like Dawnwalker and Friendly Wisp and also Obelisk, which makes the overwhelm really good. So all in all, I have been very happy with this card as my 5-drop of choice over Arcana Monitor, and overall made the deck a lot more consistent, flow a lot better, and yeah, basically rarely getting flooded or screwed either is a great reduction in variance, which is our biggest enemy in this game usually. If we make good decisions, we a lot of the time end up losing to our variance if we're losing to our decisions. So reducing that variance means we reduce our losses. We play well and have little variance, how else do we lose? I guess matchups occasionally, but the deck also has been doing pretty well across the board matchup-wise actually, thanks to its generic setup and not having dead cards, which is another way to have better matchups, and like versatile removal and a lot of reach and card advantage potential. The deck just has a surprisingly strong late game and also a really strong mid game. Its early game sometimes can be a bit weak, but cards like Torch and Acceleration and Dawnwalker can help with that a bit, because it's really annoying for your opponents to deal with Dawnwalker if they can't deal with it for good. Basically have to start wasting cards on it, trading units with it, which is something they will try to avoid, which also buys us time. They try to find a way to not get outvalued by this. So either way, this card either buys us time or generates us value. Both are good. And yeah, this is the list. Rest of the power base pretty self-explanatory. The usual 12 duels for these types of decks. Heavier time than fire. The deck, as you can see, isn't even that particularly fire heavy at this point. Might be reasonable to consider cutting one fire sigil for another time to make the turn 1 initiative descent more likely, but it might be a bit stretchy for Flameblast, since we kinda want a reasonable chance to get our Flameblast online, at least like in the mid game. We can Flameblast for like 4 to 6 if we need to. which is why I left it the way it is for now. The deck is slightly worse at turn 1 initiate than other Obelisk decks, which usually have like 8 times Sigil, so like 16 turn 1 time. This only has like 14, which is lowballing it, but that's the cost of having the 4 monuments, I guess. But yeah, it is possible that you could cut 1 Fire Sigil 4 times Sigil, but I'm not sure if the trade-off is worth it, because it might actually hurt the Flameglass more than it helps the initiate in the end. But I might try that at some point and see how it feels. But it's a very minuscule change and kind of hard to test. And math-wise, it's probably better to leave it the way it is. Alright, so that's it for the deck list. The deck has been doing really well for me. I think my current record is something like 35-23, which amounts to something above 60% win rate, which is very impressive for a new deck. Really impressive. And also initially the deck was worse, like the first, I don't know, 20-30 games I played a worse version. This version is much better than the initial version. So yeah, the deck has been performing most impressively. I feel like this is a legit new deck, like on a similar impact level as the Found Tempo deck. Like, actually I'm currently rocking a higher win rate Found Tempo with this deck, although the sample size is smaller. But the way the deck, how consistently the deck has been performing and not fluctuating much in its win rate due to the low variance, I have the feeling that the deck will stay around at least slightly above 60% over a bigger sample size even, which makes it on par with Found Tempo, which has been a top deck and probably still is a top deck even without Rapid Shot. But yeah, give this deck a try, guys. I think I found a legit new archetype in Praxis before all Praxis cards are even out. And I also think this deck is way better than Praxis Tokens, because Praxis Tokens has been very mediocre. The Praxis version that I recently recorded has been doing pretty well, but this deck even feels better than this, I think. But you will see in a moment when we take it into battle. So that's it for the deck list for now. As usual, I'm going to jump into a couple of games to show it in action. So stay tuned for the first half of the games in a moment. Thanks for watching.